There's a family group chat, and Marcus's last message in it has 0 replies. His sister's job update got 12 reactions. His mother's sunset photo got 9. His, nothing. It just quietly slid down the screen under everyone else's conversation. He's used to this. At dinner, there's always a moment where the conversation turns toward what's wrong with him. Too sensitive, too dramatic, always stirring something up. He's heard it so often that part of him has started to wonder if it's true. If you've ever felt like the one person in your family who somehow became the problem, even though you can't quite point to what you did, stay with me. There's a specific psychological pattern that explains this, and it has almost nothing to do with what's actually wrong with you. Let's call this person Marques, because it's easier to see clearly from the outside than to feel it from the inside. Growing up, he was the one who asked the questions nobody wanted answered. Why does Dad get quiet like that? Why do we pretend everything's fine after a fight? He wasn't trying to cause trouble. He just noticed things. Psychiatrist Murray Bowen, who founded family systems theory, described what happens next. In a family under strain, tension has to go somewhere. And rather than everyone looking at what's actually wrong, one member often gets quietly assigned the role therapists call the identified patient, the one everyone treats as the source of the problem, so nobody has to look at what's underneath it. Family systems theory calls this drive homeostasis, a system's hunger to stay stable, even at the cost of the truth. Here's what makes it so effective. As long as Marques holds the role, nobody else has to look at the actual dysfunction, the silence after every argument, the real feelings that keep getting redirected into who's too sensitive this week. But why him specifically? In 1988, psychologists José Marques, Vincent Yzerbyt, and Jacques-Philippe Leyens published a study describing something they called the black sheep effect. Groups judge outsiders fairly mildly for breaking the rules, but when one of their own does it, the group reacts with far more force. An outsider being different proves nothing. An insider being different asks a dangerous question. What if the way we do things isn't the only way? No group hears that calmly. Families least of all. Look closely at who usually ends up in this role. And it's rarely the family member who caused the least trouble. It's often the one who noticed the most. The kid who asked why, who refused to pretend things were fine when they weren't. Being observant in a family that runs on not looking doesn't make you popular. It makes you dangerous to the system. So the real question was never what's wrong with Marques. It's what was this family protecting itself from, badly enough that it needed someone to blame instead. Every time he tried to name what he actually felt, that a comment hurt, that something was unfair, it got quietly reframed. He wasn't hurt. He was overreacting. Over years, that teaches a person to distrust their own perception before they trust anyone else's denial. That's how people spend decades doubting reactions that were accurate the whole time. He looked at the message with 0 replies again, and for the first time asked a different question. Not what's wrong with me, but what has this family needed me to carry so nobody else had to? Breaking this pattern isn't about cutting off your family or declaring war on anyone. That's a far bigger, more personal decision than any video should make for you. Family sociologist Karl Pillemer at Cornell ran the largest study on family estrangement ever conducted in the U.S. and found that more than 1/4 of American adults are currently estranged from a family member. So if you're seriously considering distance, you're not alone in that. But it's worth exploring with an actual therapist, not a comment section. What breaking the pattern actually looks like is smaller. Stop auditioning for a verdict that was never fair to begin with. Trying harder inside a rigged system doesn't get you out of it. Separate what's true from what's assigned. Some feedback is real, but you were unfair to me just now, and you are fundamentally the problem are not the same sentence. And find one place, a friend, a therapist, where your perception gets to be trusted without a fight. That single relationship becomes evidence against years of being told you were imagining things. Family therapist Virginia Satir spent decades sitting with families like this one and kept noticing the same thing. The member who got blamed was very often the most honest person in the entire system. Not the weakest link, the one who wasn't pretending. This pattern is also older than any one family. Historian René Girard spent his career studying a mechanism repeating across human history. When a group carries tension it can't resolve, it often discharges that tension by uniting against a single member, chosen not for what they did, but for what the group needed. Villages did it. Families still do. Marques still checks that group chat sometimes. But last week, he sent one honest message. Nothing dramatic, just true. And didn't refresh the screen 5 times waiting for replies. That's not the same as fixing his family. It's quieter than that. It's no longer needing them to. If you've spent years wondering what's wrong with you in a room full of people who needed someone to hold that question so they didn't have to answer it themselves, that was never a diagnosis. It was a role. And unlike a diagnosis, a role can be put down. Subscribe for more videos breaking down the psychology behind the patterns we repeat.